Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Robbie, and this is The Unhinged Father. It's a podcast for normal folks looking for some humor, connection, relatability, or those who just like the sound of my sultry voice. A place where we can embrace aiming to be better people, but can accept that we will never get there. And that's okay. We're okay. I'm not some enlightened asshole here to tell you how amazing and perfect my life is, and then convince you to buy my how-to guide on how to make your shit not stink. I'm right here in the mud with you, working towards a better life, extending a hand out along the way. Now let's go ahead and jump into this week's episode. So this week I wanted to jump into something that's really been top of mind the last couple of weeks, but in all reality, it's something that I've been dealing with for a couple of years now, ever since I started being more mindful, looking more into my motivations and really trying to figure out about myself. But it's this internal conflict that I have between the desire to be vulnerable with those that I care about and the desire to have power, to be strong, to be invulnerable, essentially. And it's a very tough conflict. And I feel like there's a lot of people that probably struggle with this, especially men. I feel like a lot of men struggle with this. That doesn't mean if you're a mom, if you're a woman, that you're not going to have this internal conflict. But I do feel like there's some sort of like inherent, instinctual thing from thousands of years ago that go with becoming a man that make you want to be the protector, to be invulnerable, to be strong, all of these things, and to really suppress down any vulnerabilities and not show any of these vulnerabilities to the outside world, because if you show those vulnerabilities, they're going to be taken advantage of. Now, a little bit of background on me. I've probably mentioned it a couple of times now, but you might not know exactly what it is. There's a personality model, whatever you want to call it. It's called the Enneagram, and it's really something that me and my wife find very helpful. It's probably the best quote unquote personality test out there, because it doesn't just necessarily lump you into one section and say, this is what you do. You know, you're a Sagittarius, and when Mars is aligned with Venus, then, you're going to make $1 million. It's not that type of thing. And I'm not going to dive into all of the Enneagram types. There's 9 different types. You can fall usually predominantly within one of those. For me, I'm an Enneagram 8, and an Enneagram 8 is essentially, they call it the challenger or the protector, someone who their greatest fear is vulnerability, and they constantly desire to be strong, to be invulnerable, to protect those around them, to fight for people who are weaker. If there's injustice, they fight against injustice. They can be very intense, very intimidating, and a lot of times they can be described as being like bullish or abrasive, or really, quite frankly, just quite a bit of an asshole. But that's where I come from. That's my type. I'm an Enneagram 8. And so inherently, I have this desire to be strong, to be powerful, to not have any of these vulnerabilities. And that just is a little bit of a background on where I'm coming from when I'm talking about these things. Now, learning about that is great, and figuring out what my Enneagram type is, what my motivations are, why I'm feeling the way that I am. That's all great. But I still have this like instinctual feeling that I need to constantly be stronger, be better, be invulnerable, make sure that I have this immense amount of power that I can protect all of those around me and, essentially keep what's mine safe. But as I do more and more work within either counseling or reading, or just trying to figure out how to be a good dad, how to be a good husband, all of these different things, I'm starting to realize more and more that invulnerability, that inability to admit when you're not able to do something, to show a little bit of this weakness or your inability to do certain things, can really have a detrimental impact on those that you care about, those that you love, because you're just essentially creating this giant fortress, putting up these walls and not letting anyone in. And you have to be able to be vulnerable with those that you care about in order to really foster deep connections with them, to bring this love and affection and all of the other things that come along with hopefully having a good, solid relationship, whether that be your spouse, your kids, your parents, your brothers, friends, anything like that, right? There has to be a certain amount of vulnerability within that in order for those to flourish. And like, I know these things, obviously. I hear them all the time, and logically it makes sense, right? You say this stuff and it goes into my head and I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I need to make sure that I'm more vulnerable. I need to make sure that I'm opening up to people. It's okay that, my wife sees that I'm not able to do XYZ perfectly, or it's okay that I'm unable to, I don't know, dunk a basketball in front of my kids. It's okay that there are other people that are better at me at certain things. It's okay that I'm not always going to be the strongest person in the room. These things all come through my mind. And like I said, that makes sense. I'm okay with it when it comes to like a mind level. But as soon as I get in a situation and like my gut takes over and my body it feels this absolute repulsion to everything that I just said. I do not want to be vulnerable. I don't want to be weak. I don't want there to be someone who's stronger than me, who is better than me, who can, beat me in certain things. I don't want to show my wife or tell my wife that I can't do everything that she wants me to do. I don't want to tell my kids that I'm not able to do certain things, or that there's some sort of deficiency within me that prevents me from being the best, from being the strongest, from being this person that can, essentially be a superhero. And so there's constantly this conflict, this battle that's raging within me. It's like, how much vulnerability am I willing to show? What weaknesses am I allowed to be seen by other people? Like, am I going to lower my guards? Who am I going to lower my guards for? And how do I fight against this just feeling of I can't be vulnerable? I have to be strong all the time. This primal feeling of be strong, be powerful, don't be vulnerable. And I wish that I could say that I had the absolute answer to this. I do not have the answer to this fully. It's still something that I'm learning about. But as I continue to do more and more work, and as I start to build these relationships with my wife, with my kids, with other people, I do definitely see the fact that there is a certain type of strength in vulnerability. And I think that that's the way that I'm having to twist it in my mind or twist it in my body to make it palatable for me to think that I can show vulnerability, that I can show weaknesses, that I don't always have to be Superman or Thor or anything like that, that I can have this real relationship with people. There's a certain amount of strength that comes in being vulnerable, because in order to show that vulnerability, you have to have the strength of will, the strength of mind, to be okay with the fact that other people may hurt you, or that something could go wrong, or that, I don't know, you may get wounded, that you may hurt your kids, you may hurt your wife by the fact that you're unable to do something. That there's a lot of things that could potentially happen when you lower your guard down. But one of the things that won't happen is if you don't lower your guard, you're never going to feel any of the good emotions either. You're never going to feel that joy, that absolute happiness, or that compassion, or the love just like rush over you. And I know I'm getting all fucking wooey gooey on this shit right now, but it's true. You can put up walls. You can be the strongest, most powerful, protective person in the world. But if you're not letting anyone get inside to see the true you underneath it, because we all got it, right? Even if you think you're the hardest, baddest motherfucker in the world and that you're super strong and, you've got no vulnerabilities, no weaknesses, no fears, nothing like that. Deep down, we've all got shit, right? We've all got fears. We've all got insecurities. We've all got weaknesses. No one is perfect, as I've said many times in the past. And so by trying to put up this front, I understand why it's there. But truly, if you're not able to let people get behind it to see what's underneath it, they're not going to know the real you. All they're going to see are these iron gates that have no emotion, that have no love, that have no compassion, no empathy. And that's not something that I want my kids personally or my wife to have to deal with all the time. And so, yeah, it takes strength in order to lower those gates down. It takes strength to know that the real you is okay, that the real you is going to be okay. If you let your family, if you let your friends in, that real you behind those iron gates, behind that invulnerability is going to be okay. Even if there is some sort of incident, even if someone hurts you behind that, right? You're going to be okay. You have the strength to continue to persevere on, and you have the strength to show them that you're not afraid to let people in, to see who you really are, to get behind this fortress that you've created. And it's difficult. It's very difficult to do that. I still struggle with it mightily. I am constantly putting up walls, constantly blocking people out, but I've tried very hard to be mindful of those times. And It's kind of to the point now where if I get into a situation where I feel like I need to be defensive, those walls, they're really quick to go up, but I'm getting better at lowering them down or opening a door and letting people inside and kind of seeing what the emotions are behind it. Because in reality, when those things go up, you'd like to think it's just because you want to be strong and powerful, but really there's some sort of emotion that's pushing those walls up. There's something behind these walls and behind these barriers, something that's making you put up all of this protection, really to kind of either it's to protect yourself or to protect those that you feel like you care, you love about. Either way, it is those emotions. It's that fear, that anger, that sadness. It's something that's pushing those walls up. So where am I going with all this stuff? I'm not 100% sure. I think it's more so just like a realization within myself that I do these things and that I struggle with trying to be vulnerable with my family, friends, and invulnerable with the world around me, right? I know that the world is a scary place. I know that we need to have certain walls put up around us and our families to keep, to essentially keep us as safe as possible. But by doing so, you can block out a lot of stuff, right? You may keep out the bad, but you're also going to keep out the good. So do the work. Learn more about yourself. Learn more about what makes you tick, right? I learned within the Enneagram what I'm afraid of, what I'm trying to do. And it really makes a lot of sense ever since I've done some of this work, some of this research, some of the reading, and also just some of the looking inside of myself and trying to make those connections. It's been very helpful. I think that my relationships have been improved quite a bit, and I can find myself falling into these different tendencies that I had and really making room for my kids, my wife, my friends, my family, and not just being this big, intimidating, imposing, aggressive, abrasive asshole that I can definitely be sometimes. Now, disclaimer on a lot of this stuff that I just said is that I also don't want people to go too far in the wrong direction, right? Like I say quite a bit with society, culture, we tend to go from one extreme to the other. We tend to go from, and I'm using the example of dads here because I'm a dad, but it can be moms, it can be sisters, it could be daughters, it could be brothers, whatever. It doesn't really matter what you are. For me, I'm a dad. I'm in a certain role. That's where I'm at in my life. So I'm using that as an example, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the dad. But I can definitely see people going in a completely different direction where they're just like vulnerability all the time. Let me just go ahead and there's no wall. There's no protection. I'm not keeping anything out, but I'm also not keeping anything in. I'm just letting it all fucking spill out there all the time for whoever wants it. And I'm just this vulnerable, weak person who is constantly a bowl of emotions, just spilling out all the time. I don't think that that necessarily is the right path either. You don't want to go so far one way or the other. Obviously, these walls that you put up, these protections that you put up, they were there for a reason. It's a lot like anxiety from when you were younger, right? Anxiety, when you get older, can tend to have really negative impacts, but there's a reason why we develop that anxiety. There's a reason why we develop certain protective measures. And it's not necessarily that you want to completely get rid of them. It's just that you want to alter them or develop them to where they really work for you or they're appropriate in whatever stage of life that you're at, right? You're constantly developing and growing as a person. These tools that you develop along the way, these walls, these protections, all of those things, they need to develop and grow along the way as well with you. If you just have the same, mindset that you have on your invulnerabilities or your protective measures that you had when you were 12, 13, 14 years old, and they haven't progressed since then, I don't think that they're going to be serving you very well. And I don't want the world to become full of these people that, maybe this is just me speaking here, but I think that there still is. I'm not here to just dog on being strong, being powerful, being protective. I think that those things, obviously, they're core to who I am in a lot of aspects. That's who I am. I'm someone who sticks up for people who aren't strong enough. I protect my family, protect my friends. I'm someone who is constantly looking towards being a stronger, better person. I don't think that these are bad things. I think that just if you let them completely take over and you don't look at the other things that are underneath, that you're going to be an incomplete person, and then that's going to be detrimental to you, to your family, to your kids. But you should still have some strength with you. You should still be able to put up the walls when you need to. You should still be able to protect people when you need to, when it's appropriate. I think that is where that line is, right? That one I was talking about with culture and with society. I've seen a lot of demonization of that strong, powerful, protective type of person. And I understand it, right? It can be very toxic. But I think that if you go completely to the other side, you just open up a whole other can of worms. I don't know much about it because I'm not that. I haven't gone completely to the other side. I haven't dropped all of the strength, all of the walls. I'm really just learning how to build doors to let people in, to really see the true me and to make those connections that I want within my life. And I'm not sure how much of this is like my personality, how I was raised, how I grew up, versus the fact that I'm a man. And biologically, this is not always the case, but a lot of times through biology, through evolution, thousands of years ago when we were fending for ourselves against wild animals and stuff, men were typically the protectors. They were the ones who were supposed to be the brute force, cavemen, protect family, all that stuff. Don't have vulnerabilities, because if you had vulnerabilities back then, you were going to die. A lot of this has changed over the course of time just because our society and our culture has changed quite a bit. We're not constantly in fear of, sure, a lot of us are probably in constant fear of dying, but it's not like, hey, I show a little vulnerability and a saber-toothed tiger is going to fucking come and eat me, right? It's a lot different now in this society. So I'm also not sure how much of this, this message, this thought process is instinctual within me as someone who is a man, who's a dad, who's a husband, or if it is some of the stuff, like I said, my personality, the way I was brought up, some of the things that I had, the lowercase t traumas that I've had in my past, all of these things really shape me. And the answer is probably it's everything, right? It's all blended together. Everything kind of just gets jumbled up and thrown me out. And there you go. There's the Robbie milkshake. All the fucked upness of me, all of the things that are wrong, but all of the things that are right as well. It's all just kind of jumbled up in there, spitting out. And for me, the reason I focus on this stuff, the reason I talk about this stuff is because I think it's important to have these conversations. I think it's important to dive deep into why we do the things that we do, to learn more about who we are, why we do the things that we do. Because we're not going to be able to make those deep connections with other people if we can't even deeply connect with ourselves. And it's not like in a narcissistic way. It's not like I'm just this awesome, cool dude, even though, like I said, I'm sitting here talking to myself into a camera to the tens and tens of fans out there. But it's not in a narcissistic way. You really need to learn more about yourself in order to connect deeply with other people. Because if you don't know your own triggers, if you don't know your own trauma points, if you don't know why you do the things that you do, or even if you're doing them, you might not even know that you're doing this shit. You might be completely blind, just going along. That was me for a long time. I don't know the fuck I was doing. I was just kind of bopping along, doing whatever felt good, doing whatever was instinctual, until I started having issues with communication with my wife, or I saw that I was getting really angry and scared my kids. Like, these are the things that showed me that I really need to focus on why I'm doing the things I do, because if I don't know those things, then it's going to have a really detrimental impact on those around me and the people that I want to be close to, the people that I want to feel connection with, and the people that I love the most. And I guess I'll just wrap up by saying that it's okay to struggle with this stuff. I always talk about trying to get better, moving forward, being a better person, and all of that stuff. But it is okay to struggle with these things. I struggle mightily. I still put up walls constantly. I still have communication issues with my wife, with my kids, with my friends. I struggle with this internal conflict on a daily basis, and that's okay. It's okay to struggle with these things. It's okay to not necessarily be perfect. It's okay to have this ideal that you're working towards and never truly get there. As long as you're continually working towards that ideal, as long as you're continually trying and working at it, right? Whenever I hear that a husband and wife are having issues, my biggest red flag or my biggest concern is like, hey, did one of them give up? Is one of them not trying anymore? Because that's when it's over, right? If you're not trying anymore, if you're not putting the effort in anymore, that means it's essentially over. That means it's done. It's it's not salvageable at that point because that effort isn't there. There's not going to be any change, and you're just going to be stuck in the same way, and it breeds resentment. So I just want to make sure that I'm saying it's okay to struggle. It's okay not to be at the perfect spot yet. It's okay if these are issues for you, but just an encouragement to continue trying little by little, whatever you can do, learn more about yourself, think about these things, come listen to this podcast. Like I said, eventually I'd like to have open conversations with people. If you're interested in popping on the podcast, or if you just want to have a conversation outside of it, have these conversations, talk to people about it, figure out what's going on. All of that stuff is okay. It's all right. Struggle, work hard, learn more about yourself, and everything's going to be all right. It's uncomfortable. It's not going to be the most fun thing in the world, but growth really comes from when you push yourself out of your comfort zone. So if these are all things that you're just like, man, I do not want to look within. I'm afraid of what I'm going to see. I don't want to jump into my own head. It's fucking chaotic in there. Believe me, right here. I'm right there with you. I was right there. I'm still right there with you. My mind, as you can tell by listening to these podcasts, is a jumbled mess of just absolute chaotic, crazy energy. I've got so many different thoughts that go in so many different directions, and I get it. Sometimes we're not going to like what we're going to see when we look within ourselves, and that's a lot of times why we don't do it. We're afraid of what we're going to see. We're afraid of what's there, and we're afraid that we can't change. I'm right there with you. I've been there, still there. You can. You can look at it within. You can make small changes. It's not going to all happen at once. And I don't want you to change completely who you are, but I just want you to start continuing to learn, to grow, and to move forward, because I want for you what I want for myself: a great relationship with the people that I love, with my kids, with my wife, with my parents, friends, family, all of that. That's what I want for everyone. And you really aren't going to get there unless you take a good look within and start to decide what changes you need to make, where you need to kind of open up, create doors, create walkways, so that way you can start to build these bridges of connection. And that's going to be my message for this week. Definitely all over the place, like normal, right? Neurodivergent, ADHD brain, just endless stream of consciousness here. But hopefully you were able to get something out of this message, and hopefully I made sense. I don't know if I did. I could have just been rambling for the last 22 minutes, but I really hope that you found something in it. And like I said, if you are interested in having a conversation on this, if you're someone who struggles with this at all, definitely send me a DM, either through Instagram or like the website page, or obviously there's the email address as well. But I'm more than happy to have, small conversation with someone. And if you're interested in jumping on the podcast and talking about it, definitely send me a message. But that'll probably wrap it up for today. That's it for this week's episode. I appreciate y'all being here with me today. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasting needs met. If you feel the show deserves it, leave a 5-star review. It really helps. For more content, follow me on social media. As the show continues to evolve and grow, I have a big ask for all of my unhinged fans. Each week, I'm going to ask you to share the episode with one person in your life that would relate to or benefit from the message. Click the share episode button and text it to them, email it to them, or send it through social media. Whatever you do, please help spread the word to others. Your support and endorsement is greatly appreciated. In the episode description, you'll find a send me a message button. Use it to suggest topics or share your thoughts on the episode. Just a heads up, I can't see who sent the message or respond in any way, shape, or form. So if you would like a response or you want to be a guest on the show, send me an email at unhinged.father@gmail.com. Thank you for your support. Have a fantastic day. And as always, be good, try hard, do your best.